Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Kodo. I just started recently getting into YouTubing. I'm going to try to have my entire channel be really to cover the North American LCS this year. I'm going to eventually start doing videos for the LJL, which I'm excited about. The LCK, if there's a particularly great game or series, but I want to keep most of it to North America. Um, I uploaded a couple videos the other day, or last week rather, and I just thought that doing this vlogging style would be a little bit better so I could cover more and really cover multiple different topics during the week, since video taking or video making rather takes quite a while to do. Anyway, so I'm going to call this segment IMO, in my opinion, and I'm going to look at reasons why some teams are better than others, why maybe some team just sucks, why some teams are doing well in particular, etc., etc. I'm a little bit of a renegade fanboy. I've been really excited to see the team play since they got through the Challenger Series, smashed through the Challenger Series. That is, I've always been a fan of Monte Cristo and his analyzing and etc. etc. Anyway, though, so the topic I want to talk about today is Indecision loses games. And you may think, well, yeah, duh, of course it does. More specifically, in League of Legends, Indecision loses you games because for every second that you're not pressing your advantage, you're giving the enemies time to come back. And once you get to 6 items, you really lose all advantages that you haven't really built up throughout the game, such as dragons. Gold doesn't matter, and gold is really where you get the majority of advantages in the game from. So you see this in solo queue. I'd say the majority of games are lost because of indecision and people not really knowing what to do, being too timid to do something, not knowing the right call, that kind of stuff. But you see it in professional matches also, and that's really what sets the great teams aside and apart from the lesser teams, and it keeps the bad teams bad. Anyway, so I want to apply this to Renegades and talk about it in context of Renegades, because I think indecision is really what lost them their 2 games this week, and we saw it a little bit last week as well. I don't really want to talk about game 2 because they just got smashed by Fiora. They just didn't really know what to do against her. And really, when your Fiora, or when the enemy Fiora solo kills in a 1v2 and gets out, there's not much you can do. Anyway, but in game 1, RF spent some time in the late game, about 45 minutes onwards, not really sure what to do with his TP, not really sure what to do about split pushing, and it kind of extended out the duration of the game since they could have pressed advantages a little faster. They could have taken towers maybe minutes, 5-10 minutes before, etc. It's a bit of an extreme example, but you get what I mean. Now, for these past couple games, in game 3 against, who was it, Dig, Graves never split push past the river the entire game. The entire game, he didn't split push past the river, besides 5 minutes in, where he got ganked by Elise top. Or I don't think it was even 5 minutes in. I'd have to go back and look at timestamps. But yeah, that was the only time he pushed past river. And aside from that, the rest of the game, he just didn't. Despite building his build that game was Yomu's into Quicksilver into Ma, and then finished Mercurial, and of course had Boots of Swifties in there. But anyway, point being is that he was itemizing against all magic damage, which the Tom Kench and the Ahri did, and that's who he was primarily split pushing against near the entire game. And he never pressed the advantage that he had. He never tried to fight the Ahri, who didn't have TP either. By that point, she wasn't monstrously fed, and he could definitely take her with what he was building. But also in game 3, they had the top inhibitor down, or rather the top inhibitor tower down at 1848, 18 minutes in the game, and they never grouped for it. They never said, "All right, hey, let's go get this." They really let Dig just determine the entire game and the pace of the game, and that's what I'm really getting at is. Because they didn't press their advantage, Dig got time to farm back into the game and look for picks fighting or look for picks in their style of winning. Shifter in the final team fight picking, who was it? Picking the 80 carry Corky. Yeah, Corky was really just the end of the game. He evaporated, and that was it. Anyway, so they got to farm. They got to farm back into it. They got to push down towers. They took towers for near free. They were doing a 1-3-1 split push, even though Ari didn't have TP. Graves just would push a lane out to the mid lane and then walk back to group. It didn't work out. It was really awful. And in game 4 against TIP, Ari and Shen were split pushing equally. I think Ari was actually split pushing more. And I understand farm advantage and I understand that farm priority and etc. But by that point, Shen spent so much time out of lane and he didn't really do a whole lot other than give Gangplank what was it, at one point a 75 farm advantage, I think, on him. He didn't really get kills. Granted, he did save his teammates and he forced some of the aggression off, but fairly ineffective overall. In the mid and late game, the Shen needed to split push. He had 2 forms of global transportation, and he just needed the gold to get back into the game. I understand that Ari was kind of centered to the team comp to make picks, but the Shen was all of their front line, and he just didn't get what he needed throughout that game. So I'm not really sure why they are so indecisive, but kind of what I'm thinking, and maybe one reason is Crumbs who is the shot caller, by the way, seems to freeze up when he's behind. In a sense, he's a very emotional player, where his power kind of dictates his power dictates his shot calling. Not having vision really dictates his shot calling as well, and that was a big problem, and I'm not sure if he clearly identified that in game, where he needed the Graves to split push. He needed to have some sort of map pressure, or some sort of pervasive map pressure, and he just didn't ward around it, and that's it. When you look at the Graves, he never had wards in the jungle, deep wards in the enemy jungle, and just couldn't push past the river. And so I think that's part of it, is that he's a fairly emotional player, and so he kind of brings his team into his decisions as well. And granted, that's the best thing that you can do. Just listen to your shot caller and go with it, whether you win or lose. I'm sure that they're working on it, and I'm sure that in all of their analysis, they have probably identified this already. And yeah, hopefully it just gets better. Another reason, maybe just the LCS inexperience. I mean, there are 2 rookies on the team, both Remy and RF. Granted, kind of like I've covered before, I think that mechanically they're skilled players, but you can see some rookie mistakes, some kind of nerves, I guess, from them as well. RF clearly not knowing what to do in some situations, being very timid in some situations, and Remy pulling the trigger on plays too quickly. More specifically, or rather specifically, in Game 4 against TIP, where she threw herself forward with the Fate's Call and missed everyone entirely and then died instantly. And then they just lost the game off of that push. So team synergy obviously is still forming, and it doesn't help at all that Freeze has been taking personal days for whatever reason, and he hasn't been able to play with them in the LCS. Freeze is honestly a big part of their team, and they really rely on his Callista to make plays and to roam around the map and to create some sort of pressure. But that's not the solution to the problem. The solution is you need a top laner to create pressure in the mid and late game so that you have more flexibility in what you're going to be doing and your team isn't so predictable. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on that. I guess to really sum it up, RF needs to be a little more decisive, actually a lot more decisive. He needs to split push, he needs to create pressure, and Crumbs needs to really encourage RF to create pressure and not just constantly come group with the team as the split pushing Graves. Anyway, yeah, so that's really it for now. I'll be doing videos later in the week. I'll probably be looking at C9 and why they're not doing so hot right now, maybe Immortals and why they're doing great. I'm going to do another one on Renegades picks and bans and probably just Western picks and bans in general right now because I have a lot to say about that. Lulu, Gangplank, not sure why they're not being banned every game. Anyway, yeah, so thanks for watching, and I hope that you found a little bit of clarity out of this, and yeah, see y'all later.